Hello ladies and gentlemen, once again this is Jeremy Smith, Photog J the Great, coming back with you once again today to talk a little bit about a new lens I recently got my hands on. This is the Sigma 35mm 1.4. All you guys have probably heard about this lens by now, I'm sure. It's been getting really rave reviews, so I decided to give it a go for myself to see what I think. And I will go ahead and tell you guys right now, we will be revisiting this lens again for sure. Right now, I am going to be doing I'm planning to do a review of the, a comparison sort of review on the Canon 6D and the Nikon D600. And after a little bit of thought and some suggestions, I thought it would be a lot more interesting if I used the exact same lens on both cameras. And well, since you can't, we couldn't really practically use a Nikon or Canon lens on both, using something like the Sigma makes a lot of sense. So I plan to get a a Canon mount and a Nikon mount version of this lens and put it on each camera and do a review. So that's something that's going to be in the works, and we will all learn together the pros and cons of the 6D versus the D600. So I've had plenty of time to shoot with the D600, but not the 6D yet. But anyways, getting back to this lens for now. I did take a few photos so far with it. Some on a Canon 5D Mark III and some on the Nikon D700 and Nikon D600. And all in all, I really like this lens. I mean, I really do. A lot of people call me a Nikon snob because, as far as like lenses and that sort of thing goes, I'm just like not that big of a fan of aftermarket lenses for the most part. However, there are some aftermarket lenses I like, and in Sigma, I have shot with their 85mm 1.4 and their 50-1.4 and liked both of those. So really, it's no surprise that I like this one as well. To kind of cut to the chase, if you guys don't even want to stick around for the, to look at all the samples I'm going to show, just to tell you right now, I think this lens is excellent. The Nikon version of this lens is about $1,700. I believe the Canon version is $1,200, $1,300, maybe $1,400 USD. So this lens right here though sells for $899, so $900 USD, and I mean, it's practically a no-brainer. Some people don't like the fact that it doesn't have the weather sealing on the Nikon and Canon. Excuse me. Some people don't like the fact that it doesn't have the weather sealing on the Nikon or Canon lens, but I'm not really concerned about that. I mean, optically, it's so good. Yeah, I mean, it's built very solid as well. Just no sealing, as you guys will see when I go over the close-ups. But still, with the image quality of this lens and the cost of it, short answer, no-brainer. Definitely buy this lens if you've been thinking about it. You will not regret it. But anyways, let's go ahead and take a closer look at the lens, and then we will look at some samples. Okay guys, taking a look at this lens. As soon as I took this out of the box, I was very impressed with it. I mean, it has a very good feel to it, nice weight. It's definitely not made like the Nikon 28mm 1.8 I tested recently. It's definitely more like, a Nikon 35-1.4 or the Nikon 24mm 1.4. So very good build. A lot of people have complained that this lens doesn't have the weather sealing. I mean, honestly, for $900, that's almost half the cost of the Nikon. The image quality is excellent, and the rest of the build is excellent. For that sort of price difference, I can definitely deal with the lack of weather sealing. So I don't really regard that to be a big deal at all, honestly. As I said, I mean, this lens is very well made. One thing I noticed though, on the side here, I thought, what in the world does this A stand for? Apparently, though, Sigma is starting to kind of subcategorize their lenses. So the A stands for art. So yeah, I thought that was a little bit strange, actually, but honestly, I don't care. The A could stand for Anteater for all I care, because this lens's performance is excellent, and that's really all that matters. No stabilization on this one, which is normal for fast primes in this range. Of course, autofocus and manual focus, so pretty simple there. As you can see, it's made in Japan, so that's cool. 67mm filter size on this lens. The Nikon 3514 is 67mm, and I believe the Canon is either a 67 or a 72. It would be nice. It would be nice if this lens were a 77, but unfortunately for all the 35mm 1.4 lenses, you know, around a 67mm seems to be the norm for some reason. Not that big of a deal, but it is worth pointing out. So yeah, all in all, a very, very well put together lens. So let's put this back on there. One other thing I wanted to point out, a lot of people talk about having to AF fine-tune their fast primes, and I just wanted to point out that that is definitely a normal thing, just depending on your body. A lot of times, with obviously with wider apertures, you know, if you've got a camera that's at one spectrum of the tolerances and a lens that's at the opposite side, there might be a little bit of misfocus. But that's why on your higher-end cameras you have the ability to fine-tune your lenses. At some point, I will talk about AF fine-tuning. On the Nikon version of this lens that we're actually looking at now, I didn't notice any issues on the D700. However, on the Canon version of the lens, I tested it fine on the 5D3 and, you know, once again, no issues. On the Canon 6D though, I did have to AF fine-tune it. But anyways, once we get to look at the Canon 6D, we're actually going to be revisiting this lens some, and I'll talk about that in more detail. I'll probably do a tutorial on AF fine-tuning lenses at some point as well. I did want to talk to you a little bit though about the construction of this lens. It is 13 elements in 11 groups, so it's a fairly complicated optical design. This is why a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, all the time, a 35mm lens ends up being quite a bit more expensive than like a 50. So that's just another reason why I'm excited that this lens is, you know, $8.99 USD, because I mean, for that money, it's just such a great lens. And of course, it's a full frame lens, so it's not like something like a Nikon 35mm 1.8 that's a, you know, that's a crop sensor lens. This is actually a full frame lens, and it's 1.4, and it is, you know, as I said, it's basically half the price of the Nikon and almost half the price of the Canon version. So very, very good there. One thing I did notice on Sigma's website, and I actually noticed this earlier this evening. Sigma, they make a reference to a new device they have that apparently plugs into your computer's USB port, and it actually allows you to fine-tune the autofocus of your lenses. I haven't been able to find out a whole lot of info about this, actually. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong place, but if anyone knows anything about that, I'd like to hear your thoughts about it, and I'm going to keep on doing some research on it myself. I'd like to know exactly what that's all about. And the other thing let's see here. Oh yes, one last thing. Of course, it is, of course, a 9-bladed diaphragm. So a lot of people associate that with better bokeh. So as you can see, so anyways, a lot of times that ends up creating much, much better out of focus highlights. Any type of point light sources you have in the background typically appear rounded because of that opening. Anyways, enough with all the technical talk. I'm going to show you guys some images and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay guys, taking a look at some samples here. And I do apologize, these are not the most inspiring photographs I've ever taken in my life. It's winter time and there's nothing pretty to photograph outside, and But anyways, I am talking with some more models, so we'll be getting back to some actual shooting. But I just decided I would take a few random photos. Most of these were shot wide open at 1.4, so you guys can get a much better idea of how the sharpness works out. We all know that if we stop a lens down, it's going to get sharper. So we kind of want to get a better idea of worst case scenarios. So that's why you'll see that most of these are shot wide open. This is my non-photography related toy. And I believe I was focused right here on the camera below. And so you can see that it's very sharp there. I like the 35mm perspective. On full frame, it's about perfect. You know, it's a little bit wider than a 50, but it's not as wide as something like that 28mm Nikkor that we tested. So you know, you get a little bit wider than a 50, but you don't get all the distortion. So it's a nice happy medium. So you can see here that this portion is also right about the plane of focus. Really nice foreground bokeh. You can notice that the two front arms of my multi-rotor is out of focus there. So pretty cool. And let's see here. We've got just some closer pictures there. Same sort of thing. I believe I was focused right along in this area. You'll notice that there's a little bit of color fringing here, which is to be expected on a very fast lens that's being shot wide open. So, you know, nothing any different than you'd see on any other lens of this type. Oh yes, here's a photo of my boss sitting in his office. We're looking at some cameras from CES. But once again, this really shows off that wide angle perspective of a 35. You know, that unique 35mm lens look. A little bit wider, but not a lot of distortion. You know, it's a very good lens for what I would consider, or for what I would call an environmental portrait. You know, where you want to take a shot of a person, but you want to show their environment as well. So as you can see, nice sharpness right throughout here. I'm focused right here on the right eye. This lens has really nice color, just like the Sigma 85 1.4 and 50 1.4. I've noticed that the Sigma lenses are a little bit warmer, you know, in color, and it works out really well. I like that look. So you can see that everything is just all, you know, bokeh-fied, if that's even a word. So lots and lots of blur, and then just one area that we want to be in focus. All my coworkers get tired of me running around with the camera, taking pictures of them, so I have to like catch them when they're not paying attention these days. They all really appreciate the fact that they end up on YouTube. But yeah, exact same thing here. You know, shows off that 35mm perspective again. Nice environmental portrait. Nice, you know, background blur, that sort of thing. And you can see the warmer color showing through again here. I did stop down for a few shots. Actually just a couple of shots, looks like. This is shot at f4. So you can see I was focused right there on Nikon. Even at f4, there's quite a bit of blur there. Pretty impressive, actually. If you use a lens like this one up close to a subject, you will start to get some distortion. So, like if you were doing like a, 3/4 length shot or head shot of a person, you wouldn't use this lens. You're going to get lots of distortion. So, that's where you'd use like an 85 millimeter or a 135 millimeter or a 70 to 200 or something like that. Something longer. You would back up and zoom in. And then I took a shot at f8. Although in real world shooting I very seldom find myself there, unless I'm shooting in a studio. Let's see here, so we can go back and forth between f4 and f8. I was focused in the same spot. The Nikon logo up there. Really not a whole lot of difference in sharpness. You notice that it's very sharp at f8 there, and it's still very sharp at f4. So that holds true with most fast primes. Typically speaking, with a fast prime like this one, it's going to be a little softer at 1.4. They usually start to sharpen up a little bit at f2, and then they're usually at their sharpest between 2.8 and f4 usually. On a lens like this, a lot of people, including myself, will actually shoot it at about f2, and that gives you a nice balance between having a very, very out of focus background and still maintaining a fair bit of sharpness. But if you step down past f8 on a lens like this, you'll probably start to see things get a lot worse, since most of these lenses are optimized for shooting towards the wide open aperture settings. And then just one last random shot at 1.4. Although you typically wouldn't shoot a subject this close with the lens like this one, I did here. And notice that, wow, it's completely obliterated the background and the foreground. Notice there's just that tiny little area there. I'm not even sure that there's an inch of depth of field in this picture. Everything is gone. I think I was focused about here. And you can see that all the dials over here on this side are out of focus. And then everything from the viewfinder this way is out of focus as well. So just very, very shallow depth of field. Anyways, so yeah, I told you guys it was an excellent lens. We will definitely be coming back to this lens pretty soon. Heck, I think I may even pick up one of these myself. Of course, first I have to get this camera that's in the picture, the D800. But, which that reminds me, we still need to do a test on that as well. But until then, definitely subscribe. We have lots and lots of cool stuff coming up this year. And I'm definitely looking forward to it. As always, write me in the comments below if you have any questions. Until next time, this is Jeremy Smith, Photog J the Great, signing off.